Hi YouTube, it's your boy Grassy TV. Welcome back to my channel. Today we're checking out my full build guide for the Summoner Necromancer in Season 6 of Hero Siege. Command the undead and overwhelm your enemies with the Summoner Necromancer, a master of dark magic who raises an unstoppable army of minions. This build revolves around summoning Skeletal Warriors, Mages, and other dark entities to fight on your behalf, allowing you to control the battlefield from a safe distance. With excellent sustained, powerful scaling, and a hands-off yet strategic playstyle, the Summoner Necromancer is perfect for those who prefer letting their minions do the dirty work. In this guide, we're going to cover the best skills, gear, and strategies to optimize your Summoner Necromancer, ensuring that your Undead Legion grows stronger with every battle. The dead shall rise. Let's build your army. Now, a quick disclaimer before we get started. This guide was created during the closed beta phase of Season 6, and is really based on the content and mechanics that were available at that time. Please note that certain features, balance changes, or other game elements may be updated or modified as the game progresses towards its official release. The information presented here may not fully reflect the final version of the game, and some aspects could be subject to change. While I strive to provide the most accurate and effective build recommendations, future adjustments by the developers may impact the viability of certain strategies. Always refer to the official patch notes for the latest insights and information. Now, let's go through some pros and cons of our Summoner Necromancer. First, you get a shitload of meat shields on this. For some reason in Hero Siege, you get a lot of minions, boys. You get a lot of freaking minions. It's really cool because you have like an actual army. I hate whenever you're playing a minion build and you have like 5 minions or something. It's stupid. So you can get a shitload of minions. Summons have both really good single target and there's an AoE spec for clearing. So that's really nice. You do have a curse that gives you arcane break. It's amplified damage. This will give you a stupid amount of arcane break. Now, in a lot of situations, you can't use arcane break and stack them from multiple sources. However, amplified damage does stack, which is really nice. You also have the ability to teleport, which will give you telestomping as early as level 60 through a skill. You actually don't need to find an item to be able to teleport, which is very, very nice for these summoner classes because it's going to allow you to position and move your army around with you much easier. Now, this build has a lot of buttons, and I actually took a screenshot of this for you guys. This build has a lot of buttons. To be fair, once you have your boys out, it's really not that bad. For the most part, I'm just teleporting around and letting my boys do the things, and I just hit my right click to amplify damage, like tankier targets. I do hit my Q once per zone to turn on my corpse explosion aura, and I do maintain my meat shield. Fortunately, we do have arugals on, so this is kind of doing it on its own. So it is a lot of buttons, but once you get your army out, it's really not too bad. So either way, yeah, you also kind of have to trust in the summon AI to do its job. Sometimes they will get stuck in certain situations. Fortunately, you have so many minions and you have really good damage on these minions that they can generally kind of handle themselves. Even in situations where you only have like a couple of minions fighting a target. But generally speaking, the AI is actually pretty good. They're quite aggressive for minions, which I really like. I hate minion builds that are like, ugh, ugh, like a zombie in D2. I like that they're very aggressive. You are gonna have average clear until you get some investment in the build. There are some new items coming to season 6 that really help scale up the Necromancer, and we'll talk about that when we get to the gear investments or the gear section. But it is going to be, average clear until you can kind of get into some of these new items. And if you want to scale this build, it can get quite expensive, especially as you start pushing into the min max versions. Like it really, like, the cool thing about it is you can take the build really, really far. If you just want to play one build in the season and just scale it and scale it and scale it and scale it, this is the one for you. But it will get very expensive. Now, let's check out some of the skills that we have on this Necromancer. We have an arsenal of minions. We have raised skeletons, raised mages. We have damned legions. We have vengeful spirits. They're all really cool. My favorite's obviously the vengeful spirit. It's like playing a chain lightning build where your minions are shooting out chain lightnings. I haven't really seen that in a whole lot of ARPGs, and it's really cool. I guess technically it is in some other ones, but it's just really cool. I really enjoyed the vengeful spirits in this because I'm not really a summoner guy, but because of the vengeful spirits, I've become a summoner guy. Now, you do have a ton of ways that you can buff your summons, right? You have the summon mastery. This is the passive that'll give them some life and arcane damage. Summoners are arcane damage, by the way. You also have summon resistances. This will give them a ton of all res as well as physical damage reduction. And then you have a buff called Summon Frenzy. This is going to enrage your summons and increases their attack speed and their movement speed. Increasing the attack speed of your minions is super important. It gives them a more damage multiplier because they're hitting more often. It's very, very important. We also have our debuff, which is amplified damage. We can put an arcane break on enemies. It also reduces the damage that those targets deal, which can be really nice. We have a defensive buff, meat shield. This will reduce our physical damage taken. Super, super strong. We have corpse explosion. We can turn this into an aura through the sub skill tree. So I just press corpse explosion one time, and you'll see around my character there's a circle. And anytime I get within a corpse in that circle, it'll auto explode them, which is it's just some extra clear. And honestly, it adds some screen clutter, and I like it. So and then at level 60, we are going to use Poison Nova. This will be our teleport skill, actually. We turn Poison Nova into a teleport skill. It also will debuff enemies. It'll slow them. It'll reduce their damage. It's really cool. Now, if you are enjoying these build guides for Season 6, I do have a donation link in the description of the video. Thank you to everybody that's donating. You guys are freaking awesome. Moving on to our skill trees. So I like to level as a summon necromancer. You can go with some other options here. I just like the summoner playstyle from level 1. It's for the most part pretty comfy. It's smooth all the way through the campaign. It's not going to be the fastest thing in the world until once you get Poison Nova and you can unlock your teleport. It does kind of zoom up a little bit, but it's just consistent. It feels like I'm playing a necromancer. So at level 1, we're going to put 1 point into raise skeleton. The rest we're going to put into Bone Shred. The reason for this, Bone Shred does have really the best damage early on. It allows you to shotgun onto targets. So we're just going to throw that 1 point into Raise Skeleton to help us, with having a meat shield. Now, once you find your first couple of sources of arcane skill damage, you could respec this tree out and just go all minion at that point. That's up to you. So this is where I do that. Usually around level 8, you've gone through Rat Den one time. So we're going to respec. We'll put 1 point into Meat Shield, 1 point into Meat Bomb, 1 point into Amplify Damage, 1 point into Skeletal Mages, and then we'll dump the rest of it in between our Skeletal Warriors and our Summon Mastery, right? So the Summon Mastery is going to give us more damage without actually putting points into the skill itself. Also, something to note, Meat Bomb is going to create corpses for us. You do need to have a corpse in order to raise some of these minions. So this is what's going to allow us to, create our own corpses. At level 16, we're going to continue splitting our points between Skeletal Warriors and Summon Mastery. At level 24, we will put 1 point into Damned Legion. And then we'll continue maxing our Raised Skeleton. The 1 point into Damned Legion, there are at the very start of the Damned Legion sub skill tree, there's a place where you can empower your other allies. So we're really just using this as a support for our other allies. And we'll kind of talk about that when we get to the sub skill trees in a second. At level 30, you'll respec one more time, put 1 point into Meat Shield, 1 point into Meat Bomb, 1 point into Amplify Damage, 1 point into Skeletal Warrior, 1 point into Skeletal Mage, 1 point into Damned Legion, and then you're going to put the rest between your Summon Mastery and your Vengeful Spirits. You could dump everything into Vengeful Spirits here if you'd like. You kind of have to look at the difference in the damage. But ultimately, what we're doing here is Vengeful Spirit is very, very strong. It gets, it's chain lightning. It can zap things from afar. It's just a really, really nice skill. So we're going to dump all our points into it to get the most damage out of it as we can. And we're going to use those to be able to level with. The last time I played Necromancer in the beta, it honestly wasn't too far off from just going for or the full necromancer build. So you could argue that maybe not dumping everything into vengeful spirits and kind of just playing more of like a full necro build could also be really strong as well. Like most of your points will go skeletal mage and skeletal warriors to be tanky boys, and you'll just have a few individual spirits, like kind of evening them out. And honestly, didn't feel too far off. But for me personally, I felt that vengeful spirit came out on top in terms of clear and just the overall zoominess of the class while leveling. Now at level 60, we're going to put 1 point into corpse explosion, 1 point into poison nova. We'll max our vengeful spirit, max your summon mastery, and you'll put the rest into skeletal mage. It's a synergy, as well as we just want to get more damage from that minion. At level 80, we'll max our skeletal mages. We'll put the rest into skeletal warriors. Damned Legion is technically a higher synergy, but warriors will offer more bodies for tanking, which is really nice. They'll be tankier boys to have out, right? And then for our level 100 tree, we're gonna put 1 point into meat shield. This is your physical damage buff, right? 1 point into beat bomb. This is our way to spawn corpses. 1 point into corpse explosion. We're gonna use this as just a fun explosion aura. 1 point into poison nova. This will be your teleport skill. You'll max your Skeletal Warrior, max the Skeletal Mages, 1 point into Damned Legion, max your Vengeful Spirits, and then you'll put the rest of your points into Amplify Damage. Now, moving on to sub skill trees. These were a new feature in season 5. You simply will just click on the plus sign in the top right of skills. You kind of see these on this picture here. These are going to open up a new window that will look just like this. We have this giant tree. You'll put 1 point into this for every 5 character levels. So you can put points into this as you are leveling up. You can also respec this tree anytime completely for free. So feel free to experiment. However, we will go through some of these sub skill trees that I recommend at level 100 or as you're leveling up. So first, we have our Skeletal Warriors. This tree is going to focus on the skeletons being your front line, and they're really never dying because they're going to have leash. They're going to have a ton of movement speed. They're going to go from pack to pack very, very fast. So yeah, very cool. For Skelly Mages, this tree is going to focus on your mages by creating a ton of AoE circles. So you'll notice in the footage, all the circles that are happening, well, not all of them, but a good amount of the circles that are happening are from my Skeletal Mages. They're projectiles hitting enemies causes a AoE burst. So this tree is also assuming that you already have a Valkyrie bow on your Mercenary. All right, starting with our Skeletal Warriors, this tree is going to focus on the skeletons really just being your front line and never dying with leech and movement speed. It's going to allow them to go from pack to pack really, really fast. For Skeletal Mages, this tree is going to focus on your mages creating as many AoE damaging circles. You can kind of see in the footage above me, most of the circles that you're seeing, well, not most of them, but so the ones that have like the double circle around them, those are being created by the Skeletal Mages whenever their projectiles hit enemies. Be sure that you put points into Unholy Grasp. This is going to give them more attack speed and is a more damage multiplier for them. Our Damned Legion, this tree is going to focus on turning our Damned Legions into support archers through proccing undead leadership as much as possible and giving your other minions attack speed and damage. So you can see this node down here is going to give us a huge buff to the rest of our minions. It's really, really useful on bosses. For Vengeful Spirits, this tree is going to focus on maximum amounts of Vengeful Spirits and giving their attacks a chance to fork and chain, as well as they can self heal themselves. So later, you can put points into Hostile Intelligence for increased damage. That's this node down here. It gives them damage based off of your intelligence. But until you have a lot of gear, you really won't have the intelligence to make this worth it because it's a very, very small percentage. Now, for the Vengeful Spirits, you can go with this single target setup. This is going to make your Vengeful Spirits, it's going to eat all your minions and it will turn your one Vengeful Spirit into a superpower, crazy, cracked out Vengeful Spirit. Um, yeah, this will be your single target option. For meat bombs, this tree is going to focus on creating as many corpses as possible and giving you a large source of life replenish on hit. So life replenish on hits literally means that whenever you use this skill, if it's like say 2% life, you're going to gain 2% life every time this skill hits. It's really strong, honestly. Especially if you're doing bosses and stuff, being able to self heal yourself as a caster is OP. For Corpse Explosion, this tree is going to turn Corpse Explosion into an aura that automatically explodes corpses in its range indicator. We have opted for the maximum area of effect for supplemental damage and the free MTX. Yeah. So all of this here is just going to give you as much AoE as possible. And last is our Poison Nova. This tree turns our Poison Nova into a teleport skill, and it also gives us additional projectiles to debuff enemies and reduce their damage and slow them. It's a very, very strong skill. Now, looking at our attributes, skills early on can be a bit expensive. Fortunately, we are playing a Necromancer. So once we have our boys up, we have our boys up, and it's not really going to be too terrible after that. I would recommend that you put some points into energy early just to help with being able to summon all your boys out. It's going to be costly to get them all up. So anyway, when you're leveling, you're going to put 2 points into intelligence, 2 points into vitality with enough energy to feel comfortable. This is going to give you a sustained amount of damage and a sustained amount of life. Now, if you feel like you have enough damage, you could just dump all the vitality. That way you don't die. Or if you feel like you need a bit more damage, you could dump some more into intelligence and find items that have life on them to supplement for not having points in vitality. However you want to work this out. Once you get into the end game, you are going to go 100% all intelligence just to give you the most damage. If you're playing hardcore, obviously you might change that and do all vitality to stay alive in hardcore. Now let's go through our gearing section. This is really designed to give you the some good workable suggestions, right? based on different stages of the game. You as a player, you need to look at your current gear and figure out what options will make sense for you. Due to the addition of sub skill trees, there's some item proc combos that I'm not going to talk about here. So really not discovered yet, but it's up to you to experiment. Now, while we're leveling from 1 to 100, for the most part, you're going to be searching for rare or mythic items that will match the summoner or arcane damage type, but you may come across some satanics that will make sense to use. I cannot guarantee that you're going to drop any specific satanic, nor am I going to tell you to go farm for any specific satanic. It's a waste of your time. So my gear recommendations are not going to include them. Rune words, however, are nearly guaranteed as the bases are very common and you can obtain runes up to Vex by completing your Act 1 normal, nightmare, and hell quests. Then you'll go to the prospect station in the top right of town in Act 1, and you can downgrade those runes to runes that you need to make some of these early rune words. Now, this isn't going to include the runes that you'll just naturally drop play in the game. Be sure that you check the runes level requirement and the bases level requirement to ensure that you meet both of those when making a rune word. The in-game journal is a bit misleading on what level you can be in order to equip some of these rune words. For example, it might say you need to be level 52. That's only because the base itself required level 52. If you were to make that rune word on, say, a D tier that only required level 10 and the rune only required level 17, well, now it's only a level 17 rune word, not 52. So be sure you're checking those things for yourself. Okay, so our weapons, mainly we're looking for sources of arcane skills, arcane skill damage, flat arcane damage. Flat arcane damage now scales with multipliers. It's no longer just a additive damage. So that's really strong. Things like movement speed, faster cast rate, sustain from life and mana on kill. You do gain this in Hero Siege. Whenever your minion skill things, you gain life and mana back. Intelligence is a more damage multiplier, right? It is a 1% increased magic skill damage, as well as you have energy and mana can help with being able to summon all your boys whenever you're creating new games or things die, those sorts of things. For rune word options, Sky Song, very cheap, very easy to make. I would recommend. It's up to, on a one hander, it's 2 skills with up to 35% FCR. You get a ton of mana. You get some faster hit recovery. It's really nice. For Torment, this is a bit more expensive. Dell IO. It's still honestly not too terribly bad. You should be able to make this basically for free from your Act 1 quests. This is going to be a Necro specific wand with a ton of skills on it. You get faster cast rate. You get arcane skill damage. You get some intelligence. Very nice. Moving on to our hot vans, looking for the same affixes. For rune words, Sky Song, you can make this in a shield. This again will give you 2 skills, some FCR, mana, that sort of thing. I recommend that you go for a Divine Contemplation. This is going to give you up to 48% all resistance. And going into season 6, resistances have changed a bit. It's going to be a bit harder to get your resist cap. So I do recommend going into that Divine Contemplation to make sure you don't die. Helmets, again, looking for the same sort of affixes, arcane related stuff. For rune words, there is Scholar. This gives you +1 skills. You get some mana on kill. You get some physical damage reduction, a ton of it for 15% is a lot this early. You recommend making a Scholar early on. It's extremely cheap. For chest pieces, looking forward, the same affixes, arcane related stuff. You can get movement speed on a chest, as well as you can get damage reduced by. This is a very strong damage reduction mod. Outside of that, you can make a shadow at level 17. This will give you a ton of movement speed. Yeah, this is really nice early on in the game when you don't have teleport yet, as well as you'll get some faster cast rate. Angle Loxawana is the better option here. It's also very cheap. There's a Delum Hell. You should be able to make this from either your by the end of your Act 1 quest or the worst case scenario, you'll be able to make it at the end of your Nightmare Act 1 quest. Either way, this will give you up to 4 skills, a ton of arcane skill damage, some penetration, faster cast rate. Very, very nice chest. For gloves, just looking for your typical arcane caster related affixes. Boots, again, same thing, looking for arcane related stuff. However, we are prioritizing movement speed. Just getting through these zones is going to be really important at the start of a season. So look for high movement speed boots. You can craft high movement speed boots on a rune word like quick steps. These will give you a shitload of movement speed. However, the rest of this isn't really too good for us. We do get some energy. We do get a little bit of arcane skill damage. Ghost is going to be the better damage option, giving you up to 2 skills with physical damage, magical damage reduction, and movement phasing. This will allow you to move through enemies. However, it does have a lower amount of movement speed on it. And honestly, this won't matter later on. If you end up making Ghost early, that's totally fine because you're going to get teleport at level 60. So this little bit of movement speed that you gain between the two over at the end of the day isn't going to matter much, but for maybe 30 minutes. For belts, we are looking for arcane related stuff. Same thing for rings. You can try to find rings with plus skills on them, right? That can be really, really strong. But generally speaking, you're probably just going to find like FCR bases with flat arcane damage. And same thing for amulets, looking for any sort of like skills, FCR, and flat arcane damage, summon damage. And same for charms, looking for sources of anything arcane related. You can also find your sustain like life and mana on kill, life percentage, resistances, intelligence. All this stuff is really, really strong to get on your charms early. I think a lot of people skimp out on their charms. It's very important to find different types of charms. I remember one time I was playing, I think, a life stacking Viking, and by the time I got to hell, I had 10,000 life. And some people like it blew their mind that I had 10,000 life at, level 90 basically. And it's really just because of the charms. I stacked a ton of life into my charms. So I'm not expecting you to get 10,000 life, but just to give you an idea, you can get a lot of value out of different things from your charms. All right. So once we hit level 100, there's really not any best in slot gear at this point. Most of the items that you have could be swapped out for strong mythics. Item decisions are really just going to revolve around how your character feels over direct power upgrades. For example, if we have a built-in teleport, so a lot of the items that we have, say they have a bunch of low cast rate on them, it's going to make our build feel slow. So maybe prioritizing some items that have a bit more FCR on them just to be able to zoom around with the character a bit more, maybe a better option than just going for a pure damage option because we might already have more than enough damage. Especially in Hero Siege, you end up getting to points where you just have way more than enough damage. So it makes sense to try to and fill in some quality of life in different places. So you could really put any combination of some of these budget items that we're going to talk about together, and it'll make your character be able to progress through Hell 1 difficulty just fine, as well as start pushing into some of these higher difficulties. So now for weapons, we are looking for any of these Sky Song, Torment, Divinity, Wraithbone, Voodoo, Magician Skull, Dragon Knight's Flail. Sky Song, Torment are really your cheapest options. Torment's probably what you would want to go with just because it is a necro specific wand. It kind of has everything you need. However, I can definitely see some reasons for going Divinity because you do get additional FCR out of Divinity, which is going to make the character feel much better early on. As well as you do get up to 40% all resistances, which again, with resistances changing next season, this is going to feel really, really nice. And here's those additional satanics that we recommended here. Moving on to our offhand, Sky Song, Divine Contemplation, Riptide, Gem Encrusted Tower. All these are great options. I would say that Divine Contemplation or Gem Encrusted Tower is going to be definitely your more tanky options, as where Sky Song and Riptide are going to be more of your offensive options. You're going to have to kind of play around with these and decide what you need for the early game. For helmets, Scholar is probably what you're wearing. It's easily overpowered by any of these options here. Creator of Secrets, Witch's Brimtad, Deathlord's Crown, Crown of the Midnight. I mean, really, any of these are fantastic. Witch's Brim will give you some penetration. Crown's going to give you a ton of up to 30% magic skill damage, right? Creator of Secrets has a little bit of everything, FCR, magic skill damage, up to 25 all res. Really, any of these are fine. You're just going to kind of have to look at your character and decide which of these stats will give you the most value at that time. For chests, Angle Oxawana is probably what you're going to want to be in. It's going to have the most amount of skills, gives you pen, arcane skill damage, FCR, kind of everything that you need. If you end up finding a Heaven's Might is so freaking strong. You get up to 4 skills with 6 sockets, physical damage and magical damage reduction. Just a super, super nice chest. As well as you can see, we have Arcane Robe of Authority and Grand Wizard's Robe. Both of these are very nice as well. For chest pieces, any of these gloves are perfectly fine. Conjured, Mitts, Anubis's Mighty Hands, Mevius's Mighty Hands, Zealots, Deathbringers, Wisdom Holds. I prefer Wisdom Holds. You can find Mevius's Mighty got gauntlets with arcane skills. These can be super strong if you can get the +3 on them. Really, any of these are perfectly fine. For boots, we're looking for wizard boots, quick steps, ghosts, grand wizard shoes. Any of these are totally fine. I would say quick steps are probably the least desirable of the bunch, just because you don't really get a whole lot of value out of them. Ghosts being the best option here with 2 skills, and the movement phasing, the PDR, MDR. It's just really nice to have. Very close competition would be grand wizard silk shoes with 3 skills on them and some FCR. Be able to teleport around a bit quicker. For belts, again, any of these are great options. Viper Magi belt, Knight's Girdle, Commander Sash, Little Sash. I will put one more in here. This actually got buffed in season 6, Sash of the Magi. This is going to give you a ton of magic skill damage. You'll get a ton of FCR on it. It also has a mana pool aura, which can help with your sustain while casting your boys. So this can be a decent option as well. For rings, Code of Wedding Bands, Iron Ring of Prometheus, Absence of Constraint, or Mythic Rings. Personally, I prefer going with the Iron Ring of Prometheus or the Absence of Constraint. You don't really need the Kodo band for the movement speed. I can see some value here just getting the plus skill on it, but ultimately, I think Absence of Constraint is going to give you more value than the +1 skill. Iron Ring of Prometheus, if you have some, it'll give you some magic find, it'll give you a ton of FCR to be able to zoom around with. And then you could also rock any one of these 3 rings with like a satanic eye just to give you a ton of all res. Again, getting all res next season's it's tough, getting your resistances capped. You could also find mythic rings that have either plus arcane skills or plus summon skills on them. These are really strong, but make sure you're looking out for them. For amulets, any of these will serve you well. Dark Lord Sigil is going to be your best option. Gives you a ton of skills. You get a ton of arcane skill damage, lots of res. Just a really, really nice amulet. All Seeing Eye is really strong too, with 3 skills, up to 50 magic find. So any of these are fantastic. For charms, we are looking for charms that will have a ton of different affixes on them, like resistances, life, magic skill damage, cast rate, enhanced defense is a really strong affix. I don't see people get enough. Faster cast rate, you can get like smaller charms with FCR and then have like 30% FCR. It's really insane. Movement speed, life mana on kill for sustain. Any of this stuff is fantastic to get on some of your charms. I will also mention a couple of satanic charms that will be really good to get early on. Moonshard gives up to 35% enemy arcane resistance penalty. It's fantastic. It's 35% pen is stupid to get early. Now, I will mention that Moonshard has been changed to an SS tier. So it's definitely going to be a bit more expensive early on, but it's so strong. In my opinion, it's almost worth just saving up that early currency to dump into a Moonshard just to have. Yeah. So Damon's Cage will also be a fantastic early charm, up to 3 skills with up to 35 int. That's 35 magic skill damage and some arcane resistance to help with the moon shard penalty res. Now, moving into our mid game, in order to scale an arcane summoner caster, there are several aspects that you're going to need to understand. The first is your arcane skill damage. This is directly a multiplier to your skill's base damage, right? So increasing your arcane skill damage will increase the base damage of your summons. A similar Mara to this would be magic skill damage. This is going to include all your elemental damage types, arcane being one of them, as well as to get more magic skill damage would be through intelligence. Intelligence converts to magic skill damage at a 1-to-1 ratio. So 1 int is 1 magic skill damage. So all of these sources are important to scaling up the base damage of your skills, right? Because you're going to take your arcane skill damage, you're going to take your magic skill damage, you're going to take your magic skill damage gained from intelligence, you're going to sum those up, right? Get a amount, and then you're going to multiply that by your skills base damage, and that's a very easy way of understanding how to get your initial damage. So gaining more base damage is done through soft points and hard points. Soft points would be from plus skills, from items. Hard points are capped at 20. It's literally when you're putting points in the skill, it only goes up to 20. It's also important to note that plus skills generally doesn't have any sort of diminishing return, as magic skill damage or like multipliers sometimes will. Now, for summoners, we also have summon damage percentage. This falls in the same category as like magic skill damage and arcane skill damage. It's added before the calculation to your base damage. Now, we can continue scaling this damage with faster cast rate, which literally increases your cast rate. The more that you're casting, the more damage that you're doing. It's important to note that summons do not gain increased attack speed or increased faster cast rate. through sources of it on your gear. The only way that minions will increase their attack speed is by getting an affix called increased minion attack speed. It's the only thing that will affect them outside of their subskill trees, right? So finding sources of increased minion attack speed can be very, very good for getting more damage because it's literally making them hit more. Um, However, getting a decent amount of faster cast rate on your character is still important because it's going to allow you to teleport around and use your skills, especially when you're summoning, 40 minions, right? It's going to really help with getting those boys out because you can cast them out faster. Now, monsters in Hero Siege also have elemental resistances. In order to reduce them, you're going to need sources of minus enemy arcane resistance. This is not a res difference; it's a reduction. So if a monster has a 1,000% arcane resistance and you are ignoring 100% of it, well, that monster now has 0% arcane res, not 900%. Right. It's also important to note that monsters cannot go below 0% resistance, so you cannot reduce it below zero. Now, there's a couple more pieces to the puzzle. Things like arcane break and things like extra damage. Arcane break is a kind of like a curse, right? You put a break on a monster, and now they take damage equal to the break amount. So if it's 50% arcane break, they're going to take 50% increased damage from arcane skills, as well as you have extra damage. And for summoners specifically, there's not a whole lot of sources of this. The main way that we're going to be using this in the mid game and later is by burning enemies. We do have a way to burn and bleed enemies, and this will give us the option to use extra damage to burning enemies or extra damage to bleeding enemies. And our even though our minions aren't particularly doing physical damage, because that enemy is bleeding, they're going to get that extra damage. Extra damage and things like increased damage taken are more damage multipliers after all of this happens. It's like a more and more damage multiplier and very, very strong. But you really need sources of everything here to scale up your damage. So it's important to kind of talk about this because some of the gearing that you're going to be grabbing is going to be kind of dependent on what your talent tree looks like, your character page. When you see all your stats, you kind of have to solve the puzzle and figure out what's going to make the most sense for you. So moving into the mid game, here are some of the weapon options that we have. We can find a torment with a magic skill damage, an int base, a plus skills base. You want to try and get more juice out of this rune word. You can do the same thing with divinity. You can do the same thing with sovereignty, right? Now, you are going to want to get a Necro Butcher's Curse. This is your back bar weapon. This will give +2 to summon a mount. So for every minion that you have, you can summon 2 additional with this weapon. It's extremely, extremely strong. You want to get this as soon as you can. You're going to put it on your back bar. You'll swap to your back bar, summon all your minions, and then swap back to your front bar. And those extra minions don't go away. Another option is Beacon of Shadows. This is okay. If you just happen to drop one from Reaper, you can go for a Beacon. For offhands, we have Sky Song. Oops, wrong one. For offhands, we have Celestial Authority. This is going to give you a fat amount of minus arcane resistance until you can afford to take it off. So you get up to 60% minus enemy arcane resistance. This is a shitload, right? So it's very, very nice to get early. This plus a Moon Shard, and you're almost capped. If you are able to farm Hell 5 Gabriel, his shield is cracked for summoners. You do get a summon amount. You get just a ton of summon related stuff, all res up to 6 sockets. You also get a summon heretic. This is a little minion boy that is kind of like a chain lightning attack as well. It's really nice. And then here's a couple other shields that can work as well. An Ancient Ages, a Sumi, Finland, Prikel. These are decent options as well until you can get into a Celestials or a Gabriel's. For helmets, if you can farm Gabriel, you'll want to get a Gabriel's Dauntless Vision helm. The reason for it is we get cooldown reduction on this. This is going to help with keeping up our Summon Frenzy. Summon Frenzy does give our minions a more attack speed multiplier, which is very, very nice. You also get magic skill damage up to 5 skills, up to 3 sockets. In these sockets, you could put elemental gems. You could put hell runes in there to get more cooldown reduction. This is really the best helm for us. Until we can get into this, we have some other options. You can make a delirium or a curse. If you can find a plus skills base, a like plus 13 delirium is fucked up to get on a summoner build because you're getting 13 to all your minions. It's crazy. Harley Quinn Veil can also be a fantastic option, up to 5 skills. You get attributes, you get magic find, you get all res, you get all sorts of stuff on there. So any of these are fantastic options. For chess pieces, most casters are trying to get teleport. Fortunately for us, we have a free teleport, so we don't really need to go for Enigma for the teleport. But there is some other really cool stuff on here. You can get up to 3 skills if you make it on a plus skills base. That would be 8 skills. You also get damage reduction. You get physical damage reduction. Damage goes to mana. You get a ton of vitality. You get magic find. Just overall, it's just still a solid chest, even though we're not using it specifically for the teleport. Now, one thing I will mention with the Poison Nova teleport, you might have noticed in maybe my gameplay a little bit. There are some situations where when you don't have line of sight with Poison Nova, you can't teleport. That doesn't happen with the Enigma teleport. So if you're getting annoyed with that, then maybe you'll want to go this Enigma just to have a better teleport. Um, our best in slot here is St. Jupe's Play to Command. Getting one of these early, saving up your money and just kind of blasting into it can be a super strong option. It's going to give you this proc here called Commander's Valor. This thing is fucked up. It's going to give your minions at level 20, I think it's like 150, 120, 150 increased attack speed. It's stupid, right? So those of us that played minions in the past remember when fanaticism worked on our minions. Well, we now have it again, but it's on an angelic. So this is your best in slot. It also has an absolute stupid amount of plus skills on it. It has an additional summon attack speed. It has attributes. It has pen. It has magic skill damage. It has all res, and it has up to 6 sockets. This thing's fucked up, right? So this is what you're gonna want to get, but until you can afford it, Enigma would be fine. If you can find a Gem King's Garb, you can put a bunch of pristine amethysts in there. This will give you 6 to our arcane skills. It'll give you some cooldown reduction. It'll give you magic arcane skill damage, right? So that can be decent as well. And if you're playing hardcore, the Sarius can be okay as well. For gloves, Necrocrawler grips are going to be your best in slot, but there are some other options that you can go with. Shadow Cultists, these are dropped from Sungli. You go Spellweavers, these can roll arcane skills, and Fighter Magi grips. These are decent, up to 3 skills, magic skill damage. These are okay as well. But really, you kind of want to get into these Necrocrawler grips because they have that summon damage, summon attack speed. For boots, ideally, you're going to want to make Ether Walks. These are really nice on a minion build because you have a chance to regain some of your mana back through this Mana Devour proc. Whenever you're casting on your minions, it's just really nice to have. If you can't really find one that has like a good base with skills on it, and then you also have to roll this because it will roll with a random skill element. So you can see this one has physical, it can roll with arcane. So you'll just have to roll it until you get the correct one. So maybe you're not having good luck with that. You could also go with Pearlescent Dreams. These will give you up to 30% all res. You get some magic find. These can be okay as well. For belts, Rugal's is going to be very, very strong for both damage and tankiness, right? On Rugal's, you do get this meat shield. We technically already get meat shield built into our character, so this isn't really that big of a deal. It's just kind of nice where like maybe you forgot to proc your meat shield. This it'll proc it for you. You do also get up to minus 18% arcane resistances. Can help rounding out your pen. Up to 15% PDR and 30 all res. This is a lot of all res to get. Single can be decent if you find a Necromancer version of it, and Sash of the Eternal Hatred can also be okay if you find like, +4 arcane skills with like pen on there. That would be insane, but that could be a decent option as well. For rings, unfortunately, the boss rings, our Arcanist rings, have been moved to Inferno difficulty, and it's going to be a bit difficult to drop them. However, you can try and go for these if you would like to. They still have the same drop rate. It's a 1% chance. You could also try and farm out the Azazel's boss ring. I believe who is it? Is it Mevius? Yeah, you'd have to farm Mevius for the Arcane Soul Gem. Azazel's Despair has also been nerfed in its drop rate, so it's going to be much harder to find a +3 Azazel's, and you're not going to put a Soul Gem in anything but a +3 Azazel's. If you happen to find a Quickening Zephyr that has Necromancer skills on it, that could be decent as well, because you do get +3 to Necromancer skills. Otherwise, you're really just going to look for a plus skills Mythic on the ground. You could also try and farm a Rakul Ritual Band from Hell 5 Gas Tower from King Rakul that can mirror a ring for you. So if you do happen to drop an Arcanist or you get your Azazel Soul Gem or whatever it may be, you can mirror that ring instead of having to find a second one. For amulets, all of these are good options. Philosopher's Stone up to 4 skills, attributes, all res. That's probably what I would go. Penitent of Eternity can be great if you already have all your resistances capped out and you just want to get more speed. This will give you a venerated one proc. This is a ton of faster cast rate, just being able to move around through maps a bit quicker. And then if you're farming Uber Damien, Truth Heals Falls can drop with some insane stats on them. You get the 3 skills with 40 attributes, and then it has 2 random rolls. So you could get like, this one got all res, and you could get like, I don't know, plus arcane skills on top of it or something, which could be crazy. For charms, there are a lot of charms to look out for while you're grinding. You can find really strong mythic charms that have, plus skills on them, magic skill damage, intelligence, FCR, that sort of thing. For Tablet of the Awakening, you're going to run either 4 elemental gems or you could run some unrunes in it. That'll give you some all resistance. Once you're able to farm Amun Ra, you will pretty much live there until you find a Sobex Fall. And here's some additional charms that you also look out for. Just to show you what this Sobex Fall looks like, this gives you skills and it gives you summon damage up to 75%. Very, very strong. You also have Annihilators, Arcane Pumpkin, Torsteins, Fulgurite, Loaded Dice. All of these are fantastic to find. You are also going to need the Abomination set. This is probably, out of all the charms that you would get here, I'm not going to say it's the most important one, but it's just very, very, very good for summoner builds. It is a summon specific. You get summon skills up to 3, as well as you're going to get summon damage, reduced damage taken by your summons, cooldown reduction, +1 summon amount, +1 abomination. The abomination's a minion. You see it in my footage. It's the big tolly boys with the helmet on, right? Summon attack speed, summon movement speed, summon resistance, and other reduced. Like, it's just stupid. They're stupid for minion builds. You will want this. Now, moving on to our in-game min-max. When it comes to min-maxing a character, there's going to be a lot of variables to consider, as well as people having different playstyles and goals with their characters. Starting in Season 6, Heresy is going to have a new item called the Satanic Crystal. When you cube this with an item, it's going to either add a new affix to it or destroy your item. This takes min-maxing a character to a whole new level. As of right now, I do not have a list of possible corruptions, so my gearing recommendations isn't going to include them. This section will include a build that I use for in-game testing, but it can be pushed further with the new Season 6 features or mythics that I was unable to obtain. So first, we're going to look at my AoE farming setup, and this is really just a result of my own testing and refinement. I can confidently vouch for its effectiveness. However, builds are always subject to personal preference, specific encounters, and evolving strategies. There may be more optimal variations depending on your playstyle. The zones that you're tackling or the bosses that you're facing, feel free to experiment and adapt. This guide really just serves as the foundation, but the best build is the one that works for you. So here's what my setup currently looks like. As a side note, these grand charms here are +5 Necromancer grand charms. And then I will hover over what that gear looks like. And then we also have my single target setup. So I know we have a ton of physical gear on, but we're capitalizing on the high damage of our Vengeful Spirits. And then we're going to multiply it with extra damage to bleeding enemies. So here's our Pharaoh. We have a Violence. We rock a Gladiator belt. Right. This gives us a ton of extra damage to bleeding enemies. I think it's like 100, 150. I think it's 200% extra damage. It's actually stupid. Yeah, we roll pretty much the same thing everywhere else. Looking at our relics, here's a list of relics that work for the build. Holy Grail, Triforce, Magic Mushroom, Holy Bible, Lost One. All these are fantastic to get. You'll have to pick between like a Triforce or a Grail, whichever one kind of makes sense for you. I like. I think I'm gonna be dropping the Triforce just because it's no longer 30 res, it's 10 res. So I'll probably run either um I'm gonna probably either run like Steam Sale or I might run Old Book, Odd Book. I don't really need Holy Grail because you have the meat bombs that give you recovery whenever you throw them. So this is also kind of useless. Here's a list of potions that you can use with the build. Ghostly Potion will give you magic skill damage. Wizard Potion will increase your cast rate. Almond Rods will make enemies explode. Elixir of Unworldly Cognition will increase your experience. This is now an SS tier. Witch's Potion will give you life and mana as an oh shit button. Golden Blade Mysterious Potion will give you Magic Find and Gold Find. This is now an angelic potion. Empty Bottle of Vodka will give you all skills. Bottle of Rad will give you movement speed and phasing. And if we can find a source of burn in the build, this potion will give us increased damage to burning targets. For chest augments, our best in slot is either going to be monstrosity or minion mastery. It really kind of depends on your current level of gear. You're going to have to test this yourself. My guess is going to be minion mastery will be better at the mid game, and then once you get to a high investment, or excuse me, once we're at high tier of investment, minion mastery will be better than lower tier. Will be monstrosity. And the reason for this, I think that Monstrosity is just going to give you so much early power creep, right? Because you're getting 100%. Well, now it's 50% increased arcane skill damage per level, which is a shitload. Versus Minion Mastery doesn't give you nearly as much. They do give you increased attack speed, which is also a more damage multiplier. I just feel like right at the get go, getting just the base damage multiplier is going to be a bigger deal than the attack speed. And then as you start gearing up and putting stuff on, you're not going to need the damage anymore. You're going to need them hitting more often. So that's the way that I view it. I could be wrong here, but that's my guess. For hardcore Survivor Shield, fantastic. It's a cheat death. And then if you wanted to go Spell Slinger, this will give you some increased magic skill damage as well as cast rate. If you just want more of an AoE farming style build, then you'd probably go this. For hero levels, I do have an entire video talking about how to spec your hero level tree. This tree generally provides utility or character power, so it's very situational. This video will describe certain paths that you can take depending on what situation that your character's in. Again, I do have a link to this video in the description. Same thing for glyphs. All glyphs in Hero Siege offer utility to enhance your gameplay. They do not provide any sort of direct character player power. So making their selections, they're completely preference based, and it really just depends on the content that you want to engage with. So I will have a link to all of the glyphs in the description of the video, talking about what they do and which ones I kind of recommend and are good. Right, Mercenary. We're going to be using the Act 1 Night Mercenary. Currently in Season 5, Mercs only have one purpose. They're just Magic Find Aura bots. Season 6, that's not changing. They're still just going to be Magic Find Aura bots. So we want to be making them as tanky as possible, but stacking as much Magic Find on them as we can. So here's a snippet of our skill tree that we're going to be using. We're just basically getting maximum damage reduction. We get some life on hit. We get some regen. We get some armor. Just whatever we can do to make them survive. For weapons, here's a list of weapons we can go for. All of these are just Magic Find weapons. Throw Istrans in them. Same thing for chests. They're all just Magic Find chests. Throw Ists in them. Same thing for helmets. They're all just Magic Find helmets. Throw Istrans in them. And guess what? Same thing for offhands. They're all just Magic Find offhands. Put Istrans in them. Get as much Magic Find on that Mercenary as you can. For loot filters, to make highlighting items easy while you're leveling up and later in the game, I'll quickly explain how to add a filter in less than 30 seconds. First, you're going to press escape, go to options, gameplay, loot filter. Your screen's going to look like this. And on the right side, you'll have these highlight presets. You're simply just going to click on Arcane Caster. This is going to ensure that you're highlighting items that have Arcane Caster related affixes on them. They're going to have a beam and they'll be a different color. Now on the same screen, you'll see on the left side, we also have filter settings and filter presets. So this is what will hide loot based on its tier. So just simply click the one on based on which difficulty you're in. If you're in normal, you'll click normal. If you're in nightmare, you'll click nightmare. If you're in early hell, you'll click on early hell. Now I will be making some filters that I will be recommending for league start as well as end game. I will have a video on that where I describe all of them, and I will put that in the link of the put that in the description of this video. That way you guys can follow along with one of my filters. Next, we'll go through some additional helpful resources. This section is really just trying to teach you some of the best strategies for leveling, or if you're a newer player, I recommend that you kind of listen through this. This will give you some additional information on just the basics of Hero Siege. So starting with my beginner guide, if you're brand new to Hero Siege, I do have a 2.5 hour beginner video that explains everything from how to log into the game to what angelic keys do. And the entire video has timestamps to it, so you can click on exactly what you're looking for. Link to this is in the description. If you are new, before you get started, be sure that you equip your companion. Everyone gets a companion in the game for free. This will help pick up loot for you. Set up your highlight filter. Instructions are in the video. Configure your controls. These are my current settings. So I have a different minimap color. I change my health bar. This is what I prefer. You can also change your minimap hotkey to tab. I suggest you do this. It'll make your minimap look like Diablo 2 or PoE, where it's permanent. You don't have to like hold tab to get your map up. Swap to a 60 FPS. Trust me, your performance will be much better on 60 FPS. And real quickly, I show you kind of how to put skills on your skill bar. You're just going to click on this bottom right here. This right click, and then you'll have your bar pop up. You can just hover over something. So say I wanted to put Vault on Q, I would just hover over it, press Q, and that would change it to that hotkey. Now, while you are leveling, there's a difference between additive damage and skill damage. Additive damage does not work for minions. It is only for melee attacks. Skill damage works for minions, and more specifically, arcane skill damage is what you are looking for. Now, while you're leveling, there are some zones that you might want to go into to, get some additional experience or to find some upgrades. So I do recommend some different zones in the game and normal. Here's some in Nightmare and Hell, just to give you some, tidbits on where you might go to get some additional character power or experience to overlevel. Maybe a boss is kicking your ass and you just want to go overlevel it for it. So you can go do that in these zones here. For questing, there are no required quests to complete in the game. You can complete the entire game without doing a single quest. However, I do recommend that you do your Act 1 normal Nightmare and Hell quests. The reason for it is you will get runes up to Vex from them. This can be really strong for making your early game rune words. Also, in Act 1 normal, you get a movement speed charm and a movement speed potion. This is really nice, especially since we don't really have a movement ability on Necromancer until level 60. So this will help kind of, push us through those early acts a bit quicker. Season 6 is scheduled to start on March 14th. This is not an official announcement just yet. It's just a target date. However, there are live Season 6 patch notes that you can read through if you're curious about what's new in Season 6. So this link will be in the description of the video, as well as I will have a link to the official Hero Siege Wiki. This is maintained by some of the mods and players within the community. There's a ton of information here. If you're a newer player or returning player, I do recommend, giving this a read through to just get some additional information on the game. Now, once you hit level 100, I do have an early games progression tips and tricks video. This will also give you a full written guide talking about everything that you can do at level 100 to give you some sense of direction on what the that early game progression looks like. So I do recommend checking this out if you feel kind of lost at level 100. And then our last beautiful source of information is the Hero Siege Helper. Bookmark this. There's a ton of just easily accessible information here. Like if you wanted to know where the smelly cheese key goes, like which dungeon it's related to, this will quickly give you that information. It has all the affixes available. It has items. He's working on a build simulator that you can mess around with. Tons of really cool stuff on this. Make sure you bookmark this, as well as I have a full YouTube video describing what this app is and everything that you can do with it. Yeah, I will have a link in the description to all of my season 6 build guides. You're welcome to check out any additional content from me if you're looking for your next build for season 6. And outside of that, that's it. That is everything for the Summon Necromancer in season 6 of Hero Siege. Be sure that you like and subscribe to the video to keep up to date with all of my future Hero Siege related news and content. If you want to come check us out on Twitch at twitch.tv/GraxyTV, I will be playing through, I think we're doing EXO next, as just a way to test out our EXO. But yeah, thank you guys for watching, and I will see you in the next video.